this kind of European business model came along with capitalism, which is a kind of freedom. Capitalism allowed people to escape their caste or where they were born in what was a feudal society with the divine right of kings. People rebelled against the feudalism associated with the kings and their confederates, the church. So that's where a lot of this sentiment comes out of. Rebelliousness, rebellion against a feudalistic system. And it's back, and we're going to have to rebel again. But that is the theme we're going to be developing and working on together because we have to see it to believe it. Now, this rebellion happened in Europe. We had people that came to this country for religious freedom. We had people that came here to practice, the European business model. Slaves, slavery, right? Drugs, sugar at that time, piracy. And in those days, it was real piracy. They just went and took people's shit away from them. Their lands, their lives. It was the period of colonization. And there were people in Europe that really suffered under this business model, this feudalist business model. And part of rebellion is we had a great immigration to this country because there was freedom here. There was freedom in America. Freedom! Come for freedom. You can participate in the great American dream. And people came in droves. And the country was relatively unpopulated. And there was an immigration policy, which is something we can look at. And there was resistance to immigration. No different than today. But people came. And they came a lot from Europe. Starting in the 1800s, the mid-1800s, there was huge waves of immigration. At the same time in Europe, there was huge unrest because the Industrial Revolution was underway and there was a huge disparity of wealth, and you still had the kings and the queens of Europe, and people started leaving. Well, downstream, 150 years, I just want to tell you, the smallest player to the medium player to the biggest players, and I want to go through some of them. I want you to know who these people are and how they fit in. But let's see what they generated. Could we play this candidate heckled on campus thing? Because this is where our students are at today. Good, thank you. Okay, that's a classroom. The classroom. The teacher was chanting along with them. This was some GOP or some conservative people coming into a classroom. They wanted to make a presentation. Boy, did they hit a group of cultists. Everybody's wearing a mask. Everybody's dressed the same. Everybody's saying the same thing. And they're calling conservatives fascists. So conservatism, which is part of, I would guess we'd have to say, white Christo nationalism in these people's minds, this whole program is aimed at stifling a presentation from conservative people. This is not a classroom where I went to school. We had this leftism, we had this Darwinism, but we still had critical thinking, critical inquiry. We had, never could anything like this have happened in a classroom. It could happen outside the classroom, but the classroom still had a sanctity, a special, from an anthropological sense. When you walked in a classroom, you were quiet, you sat down, there was a ritual of sitting down. The teacher came in, that was ritualized. The whole classroom had the air of something special. It was a special place. It was a special place where people came to do special things, i.e., learning how to think critically. So this is where we're at. This is where our universities are at. How do we get there? Well, because this is a foreign ideology. And when I say a foreign ideology, I don't mean that it's a different ideology. And we live in a free world where ideologies are going to clash into each other. These are survival strategies. This is a survival strategy. It clashes with a traditional survival strategy. So how is this going to play out? That's what we're working on. And my theory of the case is what I'm saying to you, the listener and the viewer. Are you happy with the way this is looking? Do you see a bright, sunny future ahead of you? Is your life good? And I say this, and if you're going to say, well, you're watching this, so you probably know something's wrong. But there's a lot of people that for the material high and the safety and the perceived political value that they get by participating, they're going to say it's okay. And these people are really giving up a lot. They're giving up their critical thinking. They're giving up their forward thinking. Some people can see into the future. Some people can't. Not good or bad. It's the way it is. There's always been people from time immemorial that could look into the future and see where we called them prophets. And if the prophecies came true, they were respected. If the prophecies didn't come true, they were considered charlatans. But every prophet has another element, the political element. Prophets are politicians because they're trying to create a future. So, I hesitate now because the system is so big, because the system is the expression of all of our wills. These people are very few in number. We, the people, are massive in comparison. And this is where we're at today. So now we, the people, can look at this and say, what's going on? Where do we want to go? And all the people that get so much criticism because they're always saying, oh, you guys are conspiracy theorists, or you guys are crazy. I don't see these things. They're voting. There's something optimistic about that. There's something very optimistic about the people that are continuing to live their lives. There's something not insightful about it, but let's say their contribution to the equation is they're optimistic and hopeful for a good future. And that's a great thing. Let's say that's the mass of the people. They just want to be left alone to have good lives. So that's great. Please pray that every day. And then we got a group on one end that wants to bring everything to a different level in a certain kind of way. And there's another group on the other end that wants to preserve faith and traditional values. And that's the system, and it's moving along, and that's what we're talking about. Well, how did this system get manipulated? Because it wasn't always like this. At one time, it was not very long ago, we saw when President Roosevelt introduced us to the Atlantic Charter. He talked about the philosophy that holds one race superior and another inferior was that of our enemies. And praise God and thank God for the strength to oppose the crazy bald heads. Of course, those are Bob Marley's words. But interestingly, Bob Marley and Franklin Roosevelt were kind of the same person. If you can get there, you know where I'm at today. So let's just move along here, and let's take a look at some of the lesser lights, how deeply this has penetrated into our system.